This is Alex, and welcome to Barely Braided, where we're taking a deep, deep dive into foster care, adoption, and all things parenting, even the sticky stuff. Welcome to episode 13, lucky number 13. So I need to start off by saying that I think this is the earliest I've ever recorded an episode. Actually, I know it's the earliest I've ever recorded an episode. It's just past 8 a.m. in Nashville right now, and the kids were up all night. Brooks is teething. He's getting his first molars, which I feel like is a little early for that. But I am on coffee number 3, and I'm ready to go for today. So this episode, once again, it's sponsored by Madam Peacock's Beer and Bling, which is a women's clothing and accessory retail store in Deadwood, South Dakota, with a bar in the middle. Some say that it is the most elaborate Schlitz museum in the Midwest, for those of you who know what Schlitz is, and their website just launched, so listeners can take 15% off plus free shipping by using code BARELYBRAIDED at checkout. No spaces, Barely Braided. I'm actually headed there this week, and I definitely have a few things on my shopping list, some of which are the spring white camo joggers, which will fit in perfectly with my isolation wardrobe, and also a pair of Very G Ace sandals, which are these like really cute strappy sandals. They have a leopard print peek through base, so definitely will be my summer go-to for shoes. Without further ado, today's guest is a stay-at-home mom. She lives just 3 blocks from the Minnesota-North Dakota state line. She's a wife, a bio mom, a NICU mom, an infant loss mom, and also a foster mom. All of the moms. She currently has 5-year-old and 3-year-old biological children and 17-month-old and 6-month-old foster children. She and her husband have had their foster license for 6 months now, and I am very excited today, this early morning, to welcome Lydia Gerber. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. How are you?
Good. I am sorry your kids did not sleep.
I mean, you know the drill, though. It happens, especially during teething.
It does. And thankfully, we've been blessed. Our 17-month-old has slept through the night since she's been in our home. And the 6-month-old, he just started to sleep almost through the night. He usually is up once. So right now, we are in a happy place of getting good amounts of sleep. But I'm very knowledgeable that will change soon because he doesn't have any teeth. So he will be getting teeth soon. And so, you know. Yeah,
that's good for a 6-month-old, though. Yeah. Only waking up one time, I feel like that's really good.
It is. And like, I know I had mentioned to you before about formula. We switched his formula about a month ago. And since then, he's been doing so much better. And so I think that finding the right formula with him has been like super helpful in getting him to sleep more.
Yes, it is. Do you mind sharing which formula works for you? Because I know people are always looking to try something new. And for me, like, I didn't even know what was out there. What works for you?
Okay, so our WIC program only does Similac products, but we tried every Similac product with him and none of them worked. Like, he was such an unhappy, constipated baby. And so we ended up switching to Enfamil brand, and he's been doing better. And now we are on Nutramigen, which is like the Alimentum of Similac.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. And I'm also familiar with the fact that it's expensive.
Oh, my word, yes. Like, I told our worker how expensive it is, and she was like, what did you say?
Yes.
So
yeah, that stuff is not cheap. But I mean, at some point, it's worth making that baby happy and comfortable. It's a game changer.
Mm-hmm. It is. It totally is. Like, getting sleep and not having to help him, like, use the bathroom. Like, the poor kid was so constipated that it was not fun for either of us. Let's just put it that way.
Yes, I can relate. Ari was like that too. So before we started recording, we were talking about like baby clothes and staying organized. And you're definitely like a really good person to have this conversation with. So the problem that I've been finding, or I was finding a few months ago when Brooks was like kind of sizing up, is some clothes will say like 0 to 3 months and other clothes will say 3 months or just 6 months. So my question, I guess, is, and I don't know, maybe you don't know the answer to this, you probably do, is a 3-month outfit the same size as a 0 to 3 month outfit?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it depends on the brand, honestly.
Oh gosh, that's not the answer I wanted to hear.
No, it's not. And like, my sister's actually expecting in August. And so I've been trying to explain that to her. Like, it's really hard to know. But what I usually do is our foster son right now is in like 6-month clothes, but he can do some 3 to 6 month clothes. And so like, I usually, when it has like a gap, like, or age range on it, I usually start with those when they're going into a size. And then like the 6-month stuff I do for like when he's in 6-month stuff. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it does. It's just all so confusing and I can't keep up. And then the other problem I had is that, you know, it's really easy when you're shopping online or you're in a store to find clothes that are like 0 to 3 months or 3 to 6 months. But once it gets to the 9 to 12 month age range, I don't know if it's just me or just where I'm shopping, but for the life of me, I could never find 9 to 12 month clothing. It's the weirdest thing.
It's so, once you get past like 9 months, it's so complicated. And I don't know why. Because like, I know at some of the retailers, there's like different brands. And some brands only go up to size 9 months. Like, I know for one store that I shop at a lot, they have one brand that only goes up to 9 months. And then it's like, wait, those are the clothes I liked and I know how they fit. But now, you know what I mean? Like, it just is, why is clothing children so hard?
I don't know. It's the everyday struggle.
It is.
And you know, the other thing that's very difficult, and we talked about this earlier too, feeding ourselves and feeding our children. And the reason I'm saying this is because you mentioned something to me, something my husband said in a previous episode stood out to you, and that is ham loaf. And you said you're also familiar with this.
Yes. Yep. It's not a favorite of mine, but yes, I do know what it is.
So like did you eat it growing up?
Yeah.
Have you ever cooked it for your family?
No.
Okay, fair enough. So Joel, for the very first time, he made me ham loaf about a week ago. And I mean, it just looked like a big loaf. And I tried it, and I'm going to say the taste wasn't terrible, but I cannot jump on board with that consistency.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Weird.
Well, now that we got our fun stuff out of the way, this might be even more fun. Should we jump into our the ham loaf, the meat of our questions?
Yes, that'd be awesome.
Okay, cool. So what made you decide to become a foster parent? Is that something that you've always wanted to do?
Okay, so I'm going to start the answer to this question with about 4 years ago. I found out I was expecting, and so our oldest was 15 months old. I found out I was expecting. I was super, super sick with both pregnancies. I ended up losing 25 pounds with my son. And then with our daughters, I lost 15 pounds. But, so long story, we got pregnant with them, and I found out we were having twins in June. In July, we found out that we knew they were identical, but we found out that the placenta share of the girls was not even, and so the blood was causing a heart defect in one of our twins. So then we ended up flying to Denver for surgery, and they did a laser ablation surgery, which is like where they cauterize the placenta. And then after that, we came back to the Fargo area, and they've told us that our baby with the heart defect would have to be born at a hospital in the Twin Cities, which is like 4 hours from where we were living. So then we packed up our house and we sold our house. We moved in with my parents in the Twin Cities. And then it was September 29th, and I was 29 weeks and 6 days pregnant. And I remember that because the 29s lined up. I went into preterm labor, and I was in labor for a whopping 8 days.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How does that happen? Is that the longest labor? That's the longest I've ever heard about.
Okay, so I was on a ton of medication trying to stop the labor. So it would be like I was in labor, and then I wasn't, and then I was in labor, and then I wasn't. And it was by the end of the 8 days of being in labor, I was so done. My medicine was rejecting the medication. Like, I was so ready for the girls to be born. And so they were born at 31 weeks and 1 day, and they were both 2 pounds, 12 ounces.
Oh, tiny.
Itty bitty, yep. And our daughter with the heart defect, her name was Rachel, and she did really well outside of the womb, but they knew because she was so little, like, she couldn't have the surgery that they were hoping for her until she was 5 pounds. So, like, it was just a waiting game. And then after 8 days of being on this earth, she went to be with Jesus. And it was God totally took care of us through this time. And, like, I felt like he understood what we were going through. And he was, like, I just felt a sense of peace of her being not with us because he had taught us so much through that journey. And that is kind of what brought us to, well, originally we were going to do adoption. My husband and I felt like God had given us Rachel for a purpose, and that he showed us to love her. And now we have that ability to love somebody else, whether it was a biological mom and her kiddo or whatnot. And we strayed away from foster care at the beginning of this journey because we didn't want to lose a child like we had lost Rachel. But we went to a domestic adoption agency and did their orientation. And when we saw the dollar numbers of that, we were like, there's no way. Because both my husband and I have student loans and we own a house. And yeah, it was, we were like, oh, okay. So then we took some time and we prayed more and more about it. Like, okay, God, what is it really that you want us to do? Like, what do you want us to do? Because you've given us this ability to love and we don't know how we're supposed to do it because we financially can't afford domestic adoption right now. And a friend of mine was doing foster care at the time, and it was around Christmas. She got a call for a 4-month-old infant, took the call, and within the next 7 or 8 days, she had gotten a couple more calls for infants. And I was like, oh, really? Like, when I thought of foster care, I thought of older kids. I thought of a lot of issues. Like, I'm not saying all foster kids that are older have issues, but I was thinking in that, okay, I don't know if I can handle a 5-year-old who's going to school, who understands everything. And so when she was like, yeah, I've gotten so many calls for infants, they're looking for stay-at-home moms, I was like, maybe this is something we can do. So my husband and I talked about it, and he was like, why not? We can try it. Like, God is calling us to love on kiddos, and why not foster kiddos? Like, even if it's only for a short time, we're still have the ability to love on those kiddos. And so we called our county in Minnesota, and we got all of the information, and we started the licensing process about May of 2019. And yeah.
Okay. So at the time, you were still living in Minnesota. Is that right? In the Twin Cities area? And
okay. So we, sorry.
No, you're okay.
We moved back after, so our NICU baby was in the NICU for 6 weeks. And then we were still, at that time, after she was discharged, we were still living with my parents. And we decided that we wanted to move back up here because my husband's job had transferred him to the location in the Twin Cities. But he really wanted to be back in the office where he worked or is supposed to work.
Okay.
And so his job was super, super, super wonderful with all this. But we decided we wanted to come back up to the Fargo-Moorhead area. And because we had to change our license from North Dakota to Minnesota, we decided to buy on the Minnesota side versus going back to the Fargo side. So, we moved back. It was January of 2017.
Okay.
And then we started the adoption process at the end of 2017. And then we prayed about it until it was February of 2019. I think we decided to switch to just foster care.
Okay. So I love that you found the message that was coming to you in such what could be, a really sad and traumatic situation. I love that you were able to seek out that message and act on it and do something with it. That was not only probably therapeutic for you and your family, but also obviously very helpful for children in need. So at this point, how old were your biological children when you decided to switch over to a foster care license?
Our daughter was 2.5, and our son would have just turned 4, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you chat with them about it, or did you have a conversation?
We did.
How did that go?
Good. We had done some research and classes before we brought it up to them, but our son is super, super, super compassionate and empathetic. And so when we explained it to him is that we said, you know what, buddy, we want to help kids and their mommies and daddies who need help by bringing these kiddos into our homes while their mommies and daddies get help or while they get back on their feet. And he was like, yeah, he was so excited about it. And he talked about foster care and that we were going to do foster care. He still is that way. Even with our foster kiddos, he is so empathetic and loving and caring and wants to be helpful. Although every once in a while, he's like, why do I have to keep helping? But I mean, that's a 5-year-old for you. It's not like...
That's a 32-year-old. I feel you, buddy.
Yeah. So we just kind of told him and just were outright this is what's going to happen. They're going to come in our house and then they might leave. They might stay forever because we do. And I know this was a question we had talked about. We do want to adopt at some point, but it's not our main focus, at all. If it were to come up, we would probably say yes, but we aren't there yet. So,
yeah, I think a lot of foster parents have that same mindset that, if the right situation comes about and it works for their family and it works for the children, they're willing to adopt. But, you have to keep it in the back of your mind that reunification is number one. It's kind of drilled into our brains through training, I feel like.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're a stay-at-home mom. Right now you have 4 children in the house and your husband is working from home during quarantine, but normally he works from an office. So how, as a family, are you all juggling all of these different responsibilities right now?
With being in quarantine, it's not as hard because we aren't running to preschool. We aren't running to visits. We aren't running to church activities and things like that. But I keep a planner, paper planner all the way. And so I like to keep stuff written down, and my kids are really go with the flow in regards to, we need to go do this or we need to go do that. And so that's been helpful. Although it's kind of been a little bit of a caveat with now we aren't. And now my son's like, when are we going to go do this? Or when are we going to go do that? And so, yeah, it's...
Yeah, I can understand. Are the isolation guidelines starting to be lifted now a little bit?
Yes. Yep. I'm hoping that we'll start back up with foster care visits or bio visits in the next couple weeks. Because I can't imagine as a mother myself, not being able to see my kiddos for a good 2 months. They haven't, we've done video, FaceTime, we've done texting, we've done as much as we can without actually seeing them. But I mean, not being able to hold your own kiddos for 2 months.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. So I know you said that your license has kind of been switched around a few times. So at this point, are you licensed through an agency or through the state? Or are you even allowed to be licensed through the state? Or how does that work?
So for Minnesota, because we're in Minnesota, we are licensed through the county, which is just the sub of the state. So we are licensed through the county, which is of the state. And there are options for agencies around here. We just chose the county because our friends had been in the county.
Okay.
And so, so we went with the county and
What does the training look like?
So for the training, we had to fill out your original application, this is us. And then they came to our home and they did one home visit then and just kind of told us what we would need to fix in our home, the fire extinguishers and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You had talked about in your home study podcast.
Yes.
And then we had to do a car seat training that was 3 hours long. And I know we talked about this, and like, I enjoyed the 3-hour car seat training. My husband thought it was absolutely terrible.
That's a lot of car seat training.
It is, but it is also really, really helpful. Because, like, we found out in the training that one of our daughter's car seats, we could have been using it better. Like, we weren't using it improperly, but we could have been using it better for her. And it was, like, so eye-opening to be like, no way, you can do that with that car seat kind of a thing. And then it helped us kind of figure out, like, what car seats were the best to buy for foster kids, because you don't really want to spend a bunch of money on car seats and then only use them for a little bit. So that was super helpful, and I applaud the state for making us take that, even though it was very long.
Yeah.
Then we did 4, they came and did 4 home visits where they just kind of sat down and we talked about all the things of the paperwork, like you were talking about in your home study one. Sorry, I keep plugging your home study podcast.
Hey, you can plug away. Plug all day, girl.
And yeah, and then we had 7 like 1-hour training videos we had to watch on our own time. So we didn't have like classes or anything. We just had the videos we had to watch.
Okay. It's interesting to me about the car seat class, because I agree with you that it's very helpful, and especially to a fellow Dakotan / Minnesotan. I think I told you I also lived in Minneapolis for about 4 years during college, and then I grew up in South Dakota.
Yes.
So I'm kind of familiar with that area. And as far as the car seats go, especially in areas that may get a lot of snow and a lot of ice. I had fender benders due to snow and ice many times when I was growing up. And I've also hit a deer. And I know things like that are very common, like not like super, super bad, like rollover car wrecks, but things like that happen all the time. So having a good, safe car seat, I mean, it's important anywhere you are, but I know the chances of like the snow affecting driving is actually a real thing when you live in the Dakotas or Minnesota or an area that snows a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. So I like to ask this because I know from state to state, this tends to vary. In Minnesota, where your license is held, do they allow babysitters if you need like a night out or you need to like go somewhere for the day? Or does it have to be somebody who's like licensed or taken any sort of special training?
No, for us, like, we don't obviously utilize childcare, but in the way they configure your payment, which I don't even like to talk about the payment stuff, but when they figure that out, like, if you're doing childcare, that'll be figured out into your payment. So that's how Minnesota does as far as like for working parents.
Okay, wait, can I stop you for just a second?
Yeah.
I have a question about that. So you're saying that, let's say you and your husband both worked outside of the home and you took the children to like a daycare center or something, they would just add to your stipend to cover that?
Yes. Yeah. For the most, like, they will do like, they can do like the government like assistance programs for daycare, but they do take that into account that when they do your stipend.
Okay, that's interesting because here it's a little bit different. You do daycare vouchers where the state pays the daycare directly. And I think I would like it how you all do it better, because the feedback that I've heard from the daycare centers is that it's very difficult for them to get their payments. And sometimes they get them very late, like months late. And that's the reason a lot of daycare centers will not accept state vouchers.
Yeah.
So the way Minnesota does it seems to make much more sense.
Yes. And then as far as babysitting goes, we can have whoever we feel comfortable with watch the foster kids and watch our kids for up to 24 hours. So like if we were going away for a weekend, we would have to put them either in respite or with a licensed foster person.
Okay.
And with being on the state border, they kind of are, like, we have quite a few friends in, like, on the North Dakota side that are licensed, and we just have to talk with the county about having them watch our kiddos. Like, we've done respite for some of them being licensed foster care in Minnesota. Like, so we did respite for one family for a week, and they're North Dakota. So North Dakota and Minnesota, like, in this area, work pretty well with each other. They are definitely different, but they do work with each other in regards to like doing respite. Because like you want your kids to go somewhere where you feel comfortable. And so that's been also super helpful because it's like we took a trip and we actually ended up using a respite in our own county. But we had the ability to have somebody watch our kiddos outside of our county because of respite. So
okay. Yeah, it seems that's the direction that most states are going now, where it's more of like the prudent parenting guidelines. I'm not sure if that's what they call it, where you are.
Yep.
They do. Okay. Yeah, where you can basically treat your foster children just like you would biological children. And if you trust somebody to watch your biological children, then your foster children can stay there too without that person having like additional training.
Yep. So we've done a lot of babysitting. Our parents do a lot of our babysitting. And so like our parents will watch our foster kiddos for us to go out on a date or things like that. So
okay. So what are the social media guidelines there? Like, can you post photos of foster children or how does that work?
They are very grayscale, and that's so hard because like there's not a hard and fast rule of like don't do this, don't do that. The biggest rule is not to show the child's identity. So like no faces, no names, birth dates, none of that. So like for me, what I do is I don't do faces or anything like that. I usually will put a sticker or have it blurred or things like that. And also biological mom is on my Facebook. So like I always bounce back with her like, are you okay with that? Like, does that look okay to you? Just because I want her to not feel like I'm posting her kids all over the world. Like, I want her opinion on them, and she's been super great about like, no, that's totally great, and I'm totally glad that you're wanting to share them as part of your family. And
I love that. I love that you and her have that relationship where you can ask and she, says yes. I love that. I think that's really awesome. But that's also a difference because here we are allowed to post photos. We are allowed to post names, but we're not allowed to say or give any indication that the child is in foster care. So that is a difference.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that is really different because like we can talk about foster care as much as we want. We just have to like, we can't share their story. We can't share any of the case information, which like I wouldn't want to anyway.
Right.
So
yeah, that's interesting. I think we make the personal decision, kind of like you, to only share if we have the permission of the biological family. Like, for example, our very first infant placement, we were in communication with the biological family and we had a good relationship. But with our current placement, we don't have a bad relationship with her biological family. We just really don't have a lot of contact at all. And so what we share about her is pretty limited because of that.
Yep.
Interesting. So you said that your mom will watch your kids if you go on a date night or something. What did they think about your decision to become a foster family? Or like, do you have other friends that you told? What were their reactions?
So we've been really open about our whole journey and just like how we feel God has called us to these things. And like at the beginning of all of it, when we told them that we wanted to adopt and that when we wanted to grow our family. And that's something else I should mention. I had my tubes tied when the girls were born because my pregnancies were so difficult. So we can't have any more biological children. And so when we decided that we wanted to grow our family by adoption and foster care, they were a little bit hesitant, but they totally got like why we wanted to do it, I guess. And so they just kept saying, prayerfully, like, keep that in the back of your mind, like, why you're doing it. And yeah, so for the most part, they've been really supportive and really helpful. And they are like our biggest support system, especially the people around here, like, because our family is still in the Twin Cities area. And so like the people around here have been super great. Like every time we've gotten a kiddo, they have been helpful with meals or clothes or like, so when we ended up having 2 foster kiddos, and we can get into that in a little bit, but when we ended up having 2 foster kiddos, a friend brought us a brand new crib, like just like above and beyond supportive.
That's very nice. Very generous.
Yes, it was. I like bawled because I was like, you didn't have to buy us a brand new one. And she's like, I know. And so, yeah, it's just like our support system has been so helpful and aware and asking what we need. And yeah, they've just been super helpful. And our family is super helpful. Like when we got our second placement, Jordan was supposed to go to Houston for a week. My husband was supposed to go to Houston for a week. And my mom came up and she helped out as much as she could. She has some physical limitations, but she was able to help with the older kiddos. And yeah, it's been so wonderful because everybody has been super supportive and super willing to help, I guess.
Do you have anybody in your support system, and you don't have to answer this, but do you have anybody in your support system who maybe you wished you would have gotten more support from, or maybe they didn't show support like you had hoped they would?
Not really, actually.
Good.
Yeah, I don't think so. I wish that we were closer to my family because I know my family would support us even more so if they could. But we just, at this time and place, are where we're at, and we have a huge support system here. And, yeah.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. So is there anything that you wish you would have known going into becoming a foster family that you know now?
I think I knew this, but I didn't realize how things can change so quickly. We have been licensed since October. And we have had, like I mentioned, so many changes in our family already. Just in the couple months we've been licensed. It's been wild.
Yeah, It's funny you say that because you're right. Things do change quickly, but I feel like also overall the system moves slowly. And it's hard to wrap your brain around that, but that's how it happens.
Right. And with visits, with the quarantine stuff, we went from, oh, they'll have a visit today, we're going to do visits, to, nope, the visit's canceled because they don't want to interact with they don't want anybody interacting, all because of the quarantine stuff. And it was just 15 things happening in one day.
Yes.
But like you said, things move so slow.
And I bet with 4 children in your home, you, I guess, outside of quarantine and maybe inside of quarantine too, have so many appointments and doctors and this and that and visits. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine. I bet there's a lot of that. We have one foster child and we're overwhelmed with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Before quarantine, our kiddos were having 3 visits a week.
Whoa.
And so, yeah, which was amazing for mom and dad. And I'm thankful for mom and dad that they have that ability to do that. But we have the option in our foster care system. We have the option of whether we transport or not.
Okay.
And so for me, I made the choice of transporting once to from every visit. So whether it's picking them up or dropping them off, I would do it once each time. Which also has helped me because one of my biggest things about doing foster care is I want to be an advocate for the biological family as well. And so, like I said, I'm friends with the biological mom on Facebook, and I really wanted to build a relationship with them. And so I feel as though when you pick up from visits or when you drop off at visits and you have that ability, and not every state does it this way, but we have the ability to see mom and dad face to face in this case. I don't think that's every case in this county, but we have the ability to see mom and dad, and that allows me to build up that relationship so much more.
Yes. It sounds like you have a lot more choice when it comes to the transport and the visits. I know here they typically encourage foster parents to do all of the transporting for everything. And if you ask for assistance, or I guess I should say beg for assistance in transporting, the caseworkers, a lot of times, I know they're very busy, but they will agree to it if there's a deadline that needs to be met as far as an appointment or a therapy or something, or sometimes they will transport to a visit as well. So kind of similar, but kind of different. What are some difficulties or struggles you've experienced as a foster parent?
Well, I want to say one is not sleeping.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the hardest thing is going from having 2 kiddos to having 4 kiddos. That has been, there's just 2 more people in our home. And so I think that's the biggest thing that we've struggled with, of just figuring out how to have 2 extra kiddos in our home. It's just way different.
Well, and I like to ask this of other parents too. In your opinion, which was the most difficult transition? 0 to 1 child, 1 child to 2 children, or 2 children to 4 children?
Okay, so like my husband said when we got our second co-current placements. So when we went from 3 to 4 was, I think, the hardest, but that's because we had just gotten used to having 3. Like,
okay, so you did not get your 2 foster children at the same time.
No. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go into kind of how we got our placements.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Go for it.
So going back to, we were licensed on the 22nd of October. We got our first placement that Thursday, and she was 10 months old at the time. We had her for 8 days, and then she went to live with a sibling who had been in the hospital and hadn't been placed at the time she was placed. And so she went to live with him. We found out that mom was expecting. And so when that little guy was born in November, we got him. So we had the little girl for 8 days. She went to live with another sibling. We got baby brother when he was born. And so then after Christmas, so that was November, after like end of January, there was an emergency where the foster brother that our little girl had gone to live with, he ended up passing away. And so they needed it's part of the reason why our story is so crazy, because like he ended up passing away. So we ended up taking the daughter, or the little girl, back. So she was with us for 8 days in October, and then she came back to us in January. So we had gotten the newborn in November. I don't know if you're tracking all this.
Yes,
and
then
we got her back in January. So we literally had 2 months to get to know the little itty bitty baby, and then she came back to us. And so, and like, because of the emergency of her second placement, it was like, okay, we're getting another foster kid tomorrow, and we're going from having 3 kids to 4 kids, like that.
Just
and
like overnight.
Yeah. And, like, we wouldn't have, like, there was no question about it. Like, we had such a good connection with her. I have such an amazing connection with mom. Like, there was no question, like, that she should come back to our house. Like, it just, yeah, it wasn't even a question. It was like, okay, just tell us when she's coming. There was like, okay, we need a crib. We need somewhere for her to sleep.
Yeah. At that point, had she ever met her baby brother?
Yeah, yep. They had been doing visits throughout the whole time. So, yeah, so they had met at a visit, because they do family visits. So all the kiddos go to the visit. So she had met brother at the visit.
Okay, so then I guess my question should be rephrased as, which was the most difficult transition? 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, or 3 to 4 children?
3 to 4, definitely.
Was it?
Like, I think so, because, like, we had transition time, like, as my husband said when we found out she was coming back to us. Don't you normally have 9 months before you add a kid to your family?
Yep.
Yeah, you usually do. This time we only had 2 months, and being that she was just over a year at that point, like, it's a much different transition from, like, 1 year old than a newborn. Like, when you bring a newborn home, it's so much different than when you bring a one-year-old home. Because, like, the 1-year-old is already getting into stuff. Like,
yes. Newborn babies, while they're very, very difficult, you do have a little bit of time to adjust when they, like, sleep a lot during the day, and, you know, their needs are very basic. Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. So what's your favorite part about being a foster parent?
I think my favorite part about being a foster parent is, well, okay, so I just love kids. Like, I have my degree in early childhood special ed, and I love kids. When I was little, I said I wanted 10 kids, and I wanted to own a bus.
Do you still want 10 kids?
So, funny story. Once I had my 3 biological kiddos, I was like, nope, there's no way I want 10 kids. But now, with foster care, I'm like, this could actually happen.
Yes, it could. Well, that leads me to my next question, I guess. Are you currently accepting additional placements?
No, we aren't. So our license has gone from 1 kiddo under 18 months to 2 kiddos under 24 months in the last 6 months. And I know we had talked about how our license isn't like hard and fast, but for the paperwork part of it, they have to have on paper like what we will take. And so right now we can't accept any more placements just because 1, our home, and 2, our license. Like, we don't have a whole lot of extra. We also don't have room in our minivan, so we'd have to get a bus.
Well, there you go, fulfilling your lifelong dream. That's
Right?
funny. See, and that's another difference here too, because they do give you a number of children that your license will allow you to have. But even if you have that many children in your home, they will still call you with placements. So placement will not call you at this point, right?
No. And the person who calls as far as placement goes is usually the hour worker. So like we have the person who licensed us and she's the one who will does the placements. No, the only way we would get more kiddos would be our 2 foster kiddos do have more siblings who are in another foster home. And if for some reason that fell through, that would be the only case that we would end up getting more kiddos.
Okay. So I know in a lot of states, they do like to keep siblings together, but at this point, do they have sibling visits? I think you already said that they do.
Mm-hmm. Yep. They get to see siblings. Whenever they have a visit with mom and dad, all of the siblings are there, which with quarantine, that's different, obviously, because they can't have visits. But yeah, they get to see they have 2 siblings. So because our home is full with 2 kids, they have the other 2 kiddos in another home. And they've always been separated just because finding a home for 4 kiddos. And the oldest kiddo just turned 5. So our bio mom's kids are all under the age of 5 or 5 and under.
Oh, wow.
And so finding a home for all of them is really, really difficult in this area because that's a lot. Yeah. So they have them split 2 and 2. And I have the ability, and I mean, I guess I really enjoy communicating with others. I have the ability to communicate with the other foster mom. So her and I text back and forth often. And we've been trying to figure out once quarantine is over, like when we can like go to the park and play and things like that so that the kids get to see each other more. Because we really don't live that far from them. It's just with quarantine, we're not supposed to see anybody.
Yeah. Okay. So then I guess, and you might not know the answer to this either, but I'm curious if biomom were to get pregnant again, would they call the other foster family that has the siblings, or would they call you?
I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering.
I'm wondering that too. How's that sound? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, because we're in that situation too, where our foster daughter's brother is in another foster family. And if mom were to get pregnant again, I don't know if they would call us, if they would call the other I don't know who they would call.
I don't know. I think they would bring it up to both families in our situation and just be like, who has the ability to do it?
Yeah.
Which just from the other family doesn't have any biological children. So they have I don't want to speak for them, but in my mind, they probably have a little more flexibility in regards to adding a kiddo, whereas we literally can't fit another kiddo in our vehicle.
Well, you're just going to have to get a bus.
Get my bus. Yep.
If anybody knows of a bus for sale, send us the Craigslist posting.
Right.
That's funny. So I know we have a lot of listeners who are considering taking like the intro classes to becoming foster parents, or they're considering like kind of jumping in. Do you have any advice for them?
So I think my biggest advice is if you're not praying about it, pray about it. And if you feel like it's really something that's on your heart, go for it, because that just shows like that you have that. But if you don't feel like you're 100% ready to jump in and have kids in your home, I would say support a foster care family in your area, support a foster care agency, donate. Like there's so many more things you can do to help foster care families that aren't taking placements. So like, even if you just want to get your feet wet and like maybe just bring meals to a foster family, or like just get involved in that circle of being a part of the foster world, and then maybe that'll help make your decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I feel like throughout this conversation, you've given a lot of really helpful ways that your support system helps you out and other people can support foster families. What are your favorite ways to be supported as a foster mom? Like what helps you the most?
Coffee.
I heard that, girl. I heard that.
But I think the biggest thing has been just like clothes and meals and like stuff that is super, like, at the beginning of all this quarantine, all of our kids were sizing up, like we were talking about kids needing clothing at the beginning. All of our kids were sizing up. So I just posted on social media, hey guys, anybody have clothes laying around? Because we all know we have clothes laying around.
Yes, we do.
And we got bags and boxes and totes and all the things of clothes for our kiddos. And it's so helpful even in that, because I know that people have clothes laying around, and just asking, like, so if you're thinking about doing foster care and you want to help, just say, if you find a foster family, just say, hey, do you need clothes for this kiddo? Like, I have some 6-month baby clothes laying around. Do you need some? Like, those types of things can go a long way. Or, hey, can I bring you a meal? Or, hey, do you need a coffee right now? Like, there's so many ways you can help foster families that aren't taking placements.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I love that you brought up, hey, do you need a coffee right now? Because even something so simple and so little like that, if one of my friends were to call me and say, hey, I'm running through Starbucks, what can I bring you? And they just dropped it off at my house, even though that's like a little thing, it doesn't cost a lot of money. Just the thought that they're thinking about me and thinking about wanting to help me and be a support system emotionally means so much to know that they have my back. So even the little tiny things like that are huge.
Yes, they are. They are super huge, especially when you're going through so much transition. Like, I also forgot to mention that my husband was gone for a week after we got both kiddos. Like, so when we went from 2 to 3, he was gone for a week. When we went from 3 to 4, he was gone for, it was a little less than a week, but he was gone for less than a week. And so, like, having our support system come around us was so important. And, like, the coffee or the meals, we had meals coming out of our ears at one point. Like, it just, those are the things that are so helpful. Even if it's somebody, hey, I have a frozen meal, or I stopped at Costco, do you need anything? Like, those little acts of service go a long way. Like you're talking about, like the little cup of coffee, that's really not that much, but it's doing things like that are so supportive to us foster parents, because it shows us that they know that we're making a difference, I guess.
Yeah. Yep, I completely agree. Well, before we get wrapped up, is there anything else that you'd like to add, or anything that we forgot to discuss?
I don't think so. I mean, like, I think we've touched on everything I had written out.
Okay. Well, cool. So if there are listeners who would like to contact you after the podcast airs, how can they get in touch?
They can follow me at fostering_gods_love on Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And I want to also give a big thanks this week to our podcast editor, Ruben Andrews. He, we talked about supporting foster families and like helping to save time, and he like really saves my butt quite often. So I really appreciate him. Just another quick reminder, if you are in need of a little bit of retail therapy, or you just need to give your summer post-isolation wardrobe a little love, visit www.madampeacock.com, and you can use promo code BarelyBraided at checkout for 15% off plus free shipping. And of course, the biggest thanks to our guest, Lydia. I appreciate you taking the time this early morning to share your story. It was definitely a good one.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. And maybe in a few months, we can get you back on and do a little update, see how things are going. Yeah. And since you've been licensed for, you said, just about 6 months now, I would be interested to hear your feedback like a year in or a year and a half in.
Yes, I totally would love that.
Cool. Well, thank you again, and have a great week.